I'm not sure exactly what the outcome will be, but definitely not good.
Behind prison walls, Ghislaine Maxwell is no longer protecting futures, alliances, or reputations. According to reports, the woman once at the center of the Epstein circle has begun revisiting names and connections many believed were permanently sealed. And as that silence weakens, attention is drifting back toward figures who were never supposed to be part of that conversation again. One of them is Meghan Markle, not as a duchess, not as a global figure, but as someone linked to a period long before royal titles entered the picture. Even more unsettling, whispers suggest these connections don't stop with one name, but brush uncomfortably close to members of the royal family themselves. What's raising eyebrows isn't a headline or a sudden confession. It's the quiet resurfacing of associations, timelines, and images that reportedly disappeared years ago. When records are restricted and questions discouraged, it rarely means there's nothing there. It usually means someone decided the risk of visibility was too high. And now, as legal consequences harden and protection fades, that calculation appears to be changing, pulling forgotten chapters back into focus, whether anyone wants them there or not. That unease you feel after hearing those names mentioned together isn't accidental. Silence, especially in elite circles, is rarely about forgetting. It's about timing. For years, the absence of new information surrounding Ghislaine Maxwell gave the impression that everything worth knowing had already surfaced. Trials concluded, headlines cooled, and public attention drifted elsewhere. But according to reports, silence inside confinement works differently. With no reputation left to manage and no alliances left to maintain, leverage changes hands. Observers familiar with high-profile legal fallout have long said that the most revealing moments don't come during investigations. They come after, when protection expires, when loyalty no longer offers value, and when the cost of holding information becomes heavier than releasing it. Ghislaine Maxwell, once shielded by proximity to power, now exists outside that protection. And it's in this phase, according to claims circulating quietly, that old associations begin resurfacing, not as accusations, but as recollections, timelines, and context that were once inconvenient. What's notable is how certain names re-enter conversations without official announcements. Meghan Markle is one of them. Not in her current role, not through royal duties or public appearances, but in connection to a much earlier period. A time when she was largely unknown, moving through social environments without scrutiny. The renewed attention isn't loud, it's subtle. It shows up in re-examined calendars, in questions about who shared space with whom, and in why some moments were never documented clearly to begin with. Even more quietly, discussion has extended beyond one individual. According to reports, members of the royal family, particularly those previously linked to Jeffrey Epstein's broader social environment, are being mentioned again in analytical circles. Prince Andrew's past associations are already public record. But what's changing is how those connections are being mapped alongside others who later entered royal life through different paths. This isn't about dramatic revelations. It's about erosion. The kind that happens when silence can no longer be maintained uniformly. When too many people remember overlapping details. And when time, instead of burying questions, sharpens them. Because once silence stops working, everything that depended on it becomes unstable. And that's when attention shifts, not to what's said publicly, but to what quietly returns. And what's returning now isn't testimony or headlines. It's visual and contextual material that was never meant to resurface. The reappearance of certain images has unsettled people who understand how controlled elite visibility really is. According to circulating claims, photographs involving Meghan Markle from years before her royal connection were once accessible, then quietly restricted, and are now being discussed again behind closed doors. What makes this notable isn't what the images allegedly show at first glance. It's where they were taken, who else was reportedly present, and why access to them became limited without explanation. In high-level media ecosystems, images don't disappear accidentally. Archives don't restrict material unless someone flags potential complications. Licensing doesn't suddenly change unless risk enters the equation. And while no institution has publicly explained why certain visuals became difficult to access, observers point out that erasure often draws more attention than exposure. Because when something is hidden, it suggests someone believed it still mattered. According to reports, these images aren't considered sensitive because of appearance. They're sensitive because they establish physical presence within known social environments. Not implication, not accusation, placement. And placement is powerful. It anchors timelines. It confirms proximity. It challenges the comfort of plausible distance. When a person can be placed within a specific network at a specific time, questions naturally follow. Not about intent, but about awareness. What's also raised concern is the reported effort that went into keeping these materials out of circulation. Claims suggest images were scrubbed from databases, made unavailable for licensing, or quietly deprioritized. That level of coordination implies more than casual embarrassment. Institutions don't move collectively unless someone has decided the cost of visibility outweighs the benefit of transparency. And now, according to ongoing discussion, that control is slipping. Not because someone chose to release anything publicly, but because too many independent records exist. Too many overlapping witnesses. Too many people who remember being in the same rooms. Silence can be coordinated for years, but it rarely survives indefinitely. What these images do, according to analysts, is remove ambiguity. They don't tell anyone what happened. They tell us who was there. And in environments later scrutinized for abuse of power, presence becomes a critical detail. Not because it assigns blame, but because it removes the ability to say, "I was never close enough to know." And that leads directly to a larger question. How did someone without visibility gain access to spaces where visibility wasn't required? Before Meghan Markle became one of the most recognizable women in the world, she occupied a very different position. According to reports, that anonymity wasn't a disadvantage. It was an asset. In elite social environments, obscurity often grants more freedom than fame. Unknown figures are tracked. Their movements aren't logged. Their presence doesn't raise eyebrows. And in private gatherings, that lack of scrutiny can function as protection. Claims suggest that during this period, Meghan moved through social spaces where introductions were informal and documentation was minimal. Events where names weren't emphasized and attendance lists didn't exist. In those environments, being unremarkable meant being invisible. No one questioned how she arrived. No one asked who funded the travel. No one wondered who extended the invitation. Because the environment wasn't designed for accountability. It was designed for discretion. Observers note that this explains why early images weren't labeled, why timelines remained vague, and why certain associations weren't discussed until much later. Obscurity shields a person only while it lasts. The moment status changes, every prior step is reassessed under a new lens. What once looked irrelevant begins to look unfinished. According to claims, this transition from anonymous participant to global figure is what transformed harmless moments into sensitive ones. Not because the past changed, but because its visibility did. Once Meghan entered royal life, every environment she had previously occupied became subject to public interest. Spaces that once relied on silence suddenly carried risk. And that's when obscurity stopped protecting and started endangering. Because anonymity only works when no one is watching. Once attention arrives, what was never recorded becomes suspicious. What was never explained becomes important. And what was once forgotten becomes difficult to dismiss. Which raises another issue. Access like that doesn't happen randomly. There are corridors into elite spaces. And one of the most frequently mentioned in reports leads directly to a private members club designed for discretion. According to repeated claims, Soho House played a significant role in connecting emerging figures with powerful networks during the mid-2010s. On the surface, it presented itself as a creative haven. In practice, it functioned as a curated access point. Membership implied trust. Invitations signaled approval, and openings weren't casual gatherings. They were strategic convergence zones. Reports indicate that Meghan Markle attended multiple Soho House events during a period when she was not a major public figure. One frequently mentioned instance involves international travel tied to a club opening, including premium accommodations that some observers later described as inconsistent with her known income at the time. No public explanations were offered, and none were required then. In those circles, financial questions are considered impolite. What matters isn't the travel itself. It's what those gatherings facilitated. Soho House events attracted financiers, royalty-adjacent figures, media executives, and individuals accustomed to operating outside public visibility. Introductions happened quietly. Relationships formed without documentation. And discretion was the default expectation. According to reports, these environments overlapped with social calendars connected to Jeffrey Epstein's wider circle. Not directly, not formally, but through shared attendees and parallel timing. The same cities, the same seasons, the same names appearing across unrelated guest lists. This is where the narrative tightens. Access through one corridor often leads into others. Once someone is accepted as safe within a trusted space, their presence elsewhere becomes unremarkable. They blend in, they move freely, and no one feels responsible for tracking how often paths cross. And those crossings are what analysts are re-examining now. The concept most frequently referenced in current discussions is proximity. Not interaction, not behavior. Proximity. According to reports, Meghan Markle was present in New York during periods that aligned with Jeffrey Epstein's active social calendar and Prince Andrew's known presence in the city. Once is coincidence. Repetition invites scrutiny. Observers emphasize that this doesn't imply wrongdoing. It establishes opportunity. And opportunity matters when environments are later exposed as exploitative. Being near power doesn't mean participating in abuse, but it does mean witnessing dynamics others never saw. What makes this unsettling for institutions is that proximity dismantles distance. It removes the ability to claim complete separation. And once separation disappears, accountability questions emerge. Not legal ones, but reputational ones. According to analysts, this is why resurfacing images and overlapping timelines feel destabilizing. They don't accuse anyone of anything. They challenge carefully maintained narratives of isolation. They suggest shared environments, shared social oxygen, and shared silence. And once that context is restored, it can't be erased again. Once proximity is acknowledged, attention naturally widens. Not to deflect, but to compare. According to ongoing discussion among analysts and royal observers, Meghan Markle's reported trajectory doesn't exist in isolation. Similar pathways appear when examining other women who later entered European royal families. Pathways that began far from palaces and passed through elite social environments long before public elevation. Two names are frequently referenced in these comparisons. Sofia Hellqvist of Sweden, now Princess Sofia, had a public past that included modeling and social circles later rumored to overlap with Epstein-connected figures as early as the mid-2000s. While no wrongdoing has ever been established, observers note how quickly those early years faded from public conversation once she married into royalty. The second is Mette Merritt of Norway, who publicly apologized in 2019 for having maintained a friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, acknowledging what she described as poor judgment. Her admission was notable not for what it revealed, but for what it confirmed, that Epstein's reach extended well beyond one country or social tier. What matters here isn't moral comparison, it's structural similarity. According to reports, Jeffrey Epstein didn't operate chaotically. He embedded himself within systems that rewarded discretion, ambition, and upward mobility. He moved through environments where introductions mattered more than documentation, and where past associations could be quietly absorbed once status was achieved. Analysts argue that this is why these cases feel connected even when details differ. Obscurity, access, elevation. The pattern repeats often enough to demand attention, and once seen, it becomes difficult to dismiss Meghan Markle's early social positioning as completely unrelated. Not because anyone insists on a conclusion, but because the architecture looks familiar. Royal institutions are particularly sensitive to patterns. They survive by controlling narrative continuity. Anything that disrupts that continuity, especially recurring structures of access, poses a reputational risk. And that risk intensifies when timelines begin to overlap in ways that are hard to reconcile publicly, which brings attention to a specific window that refuses to stay quiet. February 2016 continues to surface in discussions for one reason. It appears in two narratives that were never meant to intersect. On one side, this period marks when Meghan Markle later said she first met Prince Harry. On the other, reports suggest this same window aligns with elite yacht gatherings tied to wealthy patrons, models, and discreet social companions. These were not leisure cruises. According to claims, these excursions were carefully curated environments designed for privacy and insulation. Phones discouraged, records minimal, attendance fluid, names rarely attached. The purpose wasn't travel, it was controlled proximity. Reports circulating online suggest Meghan Markle may have participated in one such yacht week during this time frame. Again, no accusation is implied. The significance lies in overlap. When two origin points share the same narrow window, questions naturally arise. Not because anyone demands an answer, but because timelines resist manipulation once set. Royal narratives depend heavily on clean beginnings. First meetings are symbolic. They're meant to signal destiny, chance, and romance. When alternative timelines surface, even as speculation, they complicate that symbolism. And complexity is dangerous for institutions built on continuity. Analysts note that this is why these overlaps are discussed cautiously. They don't dismantle anything on their own, but they destabilize certainty. And in environments governed by power, uncertainty is often treated as a threat. which may explain why the conversation didn't stop at social analysis. The shift from social relevance to legal relevance marked a turning point. According to court-related reports, Virginia Giuffre, one of the most prominent accusers connected to Jeffrey Epstein, intended to name Meghan Markle as a potential witness in her civil case involving Prince Andrew. This wasn't symbolic, it was procedural. 3 reasons were cited in discussions surrounding that consideration. First, Meghan Markle resided in the United States, making jurisdiction feasible. Second, she was described as having been socially acquainted with Prince Andrew during overlapping periods. And third, she was reportedly present within social environments connected to Jeffrey Epstein. In legal terms, witnesses are not accused, they are positioned. Their value lies in observation, not implication. Presence establishes what someone may have seen, heard, or understood. And the moment Meghan's name entered that context, the conversation shifted permanently. Although she was never called to testify, the consideration alone altered perception. It moved discussion out of speculative social analysis and into judicial relevance. Once that threshold is crossed, silence becomes harder to justify. Observers point out that legal systems don't entertain names casually. Even preliminary consideration requires connective tissue, timelines, proximity, and corroboration. And while nothing proceeded further, the moment confirmed that Meghan Markle's past associations were not viewed as irrelevant by everyone involved. That shift helps explain what followed next. After legal scrutiny intensified, something subtle but noticeable occurred. According to reports, image archives involving Meghan Markle began changing. Photographs that were once accessible through agencies like Getty Images reportedly became restricted or unavailable. No public explanation was offered. Licensing conditions changed quietly. To observers familiar with media management, this behavior raised immediate questions. Institutions don't restrict visuals without reason. They don't preemptively erase unless risk has been identified. And attempts to hide material often signal that the material still carries weight. According to analysts, this wasn't about scandal prevention. It was about context control. Images provide anchoring. They confirm time, place, and presence. Once those anchors exist, narratives lose flexibility. What made the erasure especially noticeable was timing. It coincided with renewed discussion around Epstein-related networks and Maxwell's legal fallout. When systems move defensively instead of transparently, attention sharpens. By this point, too many people remembered what had existed. Too many independent records confirmed overlaps. Erasure didn't remove context, it amplified curiosity. And once curiosity returns, containment becomes impossible. What emerges from all of this isn't a single accusation or revelation. It's a process, a mechanism by which anonymity enables access. Access facilitates elevation, and elevation attempts to overwrite what came before. For a long time, that mechanism worked. Silence held. Images vanished. Timelines softened. But records don't forget. Photographs wait, witnesses remember. And silence only works as long as everyone benefits from it. Ghislaine Maxwell's imprisonment altered that balance. So did legal scrutiny. So did shifting public tolerance for incomplete narratives. What once remained invisible is now being recontextualized. Not loudly, not recklessly, but persistently. This moment doesn't close anything. It reopens questions institutions hoped were settled. Because once context returns, control weakens. And when control weakens, narratives lose their final edits. What was once unseen is now unavoidable.